Hello, and welcome to the Night Sky Reader. I'm here with a story to help you relax, meditate, or gently drift to sleep. Tonight, grinding ink on an inkstone, a sleep story. Settle in, close your eyes if you'd like, and let's begin. The first drop lands on the dry inkstone and spreads in a slow, deliberate shape, as if the stone has been waiting all evening for this exact weight of water. Under the lamp, it looks brighter than it should, a clear oval with a shining edge, moving outward over the dark surface by fractions. For a moment, it resembles weather seen from very far away, a tiny front advancing over matte black ground. Then it settles. The motion ends so completely that the room seems to notice. You sit with one hand resting near the stone, and the other still half curled from the day. The desk is simple in the lamplight, the inkstone placed squarely before you, the stick laid beside it, a small dish of water, a folded cloth, a brush waiting across its rest, a page set nearby in patient whiteness. Nothing here is dramatic. Nothing asks to be admired. Even so, the page carries the faint pressure that made you come to the desk in the first place. You had thought you were arriving to write. The room is quiet in the ordinary way, not empty of sound but narrowed by evening. Wood gives off its dry, faint smell. Paper has its own coolness. The cloth smells clean. The water in its dish reflects a small crescent of light. Beyond the lamp, the corners of the room are already soft. Another drop joins the first. The water thickens its little boundary and begins to find the shallow slope of the stone. It does not rush. On a sink or plate, water hurries away. Here it only loosens itself and waits. Your day is still moving faster than the desk. You can feel it in the way your fingers reach too quickly for the ink stick, in the small impatience that is almost invisible until it has something solid to rest against. The stick is dry and faintly fragrant, more soot than perfume, with that mild mineral smell that comes when carbon and glue and old polishing meet the damp air. Its surface is cool. Its weight is modest, but it answers the hand with a clear fact of its own. It is not soft. It is not ready. It will not become liquid because you would like it to. You set the end of it onto the wetted stone. The first contact is quiet but not silent. A small rough note sounds beneath your hand, a faint grainy resistance. You angle the stick slightly and begin to move it in short circles over the wet patch, careful not to stray too wide, wanting to keep the water where the stone can work it. The motion should be easy. At first it is not. You are pressing harder than you need to. The stone tells you this immediately. The circles feel stiff in the wrist. The sound is dry at the edges, not yet the soft repeated rasp you were expecting, but a delicate scrape interrupted by tiny catches. When you lift the stick to look, the water has barely changed. A pale gray crescent stains the surface where the circles have passed, more suggestion than ink. It looks almost dusty, as if smoke has been dissolved and laid down before it can gather strength. You lower the stick and continue. The gray deepens by almost nothing. A little slurry forms, thin and uneven, drifting toward the small well at the lower end of the stone. In the lamp's reflection you can see the texture of it, not actual grains perhaps, but an unsteady cloudiness that says the mixture is still young and your hand is still trying to hurry it. The temptation arrives in a practical shape. More pressure, larger circles, a quicker path to usable black. But the harder you press, the less graceful the movement becomes. The end of the stick drags. The sound roughens. Instead of gathering richness, the liquid spreads too thin and loses itself across the stone in a wash of diluted gray. The motion feels corrective, managerial, more about getting somewhere than watching what is happening. The page at your side remains blank. You do not look directly at it, though you know where it is. Its presence is enough. It stands for the next thing and the thing after that, for all that has come with you to the desk and settled in the hand. Still, the stone does not argue. It only gives the same answer each time. Water, soot, friction, time. A few more circles. The gray crescent broadens. The first real trace of suspended black appears in the wetness, so slight you almost miss it. When the stick passes through, a darker line follows and then loosens into the rest. The change is modest, but it is enough to keep you there. After a while, the sound begins to matter more than the color. At first it stays close to the fingertips, a private noise, the sort of thing you only hear when the room around it has already grown still. Then, because the motion repeats, because there is nothing else here demanding its share of attention, the sound separates from the other parts of the task and becomes legible. Not loud, not musical, just distinct. Wet stone under soot, dry stick yielding molecule by molecule, a faint rasp that steadies whenever your hand does. You begin to listen for that steadiness. The circles get smaller. That happens almost by accident. You stop trying to cover more surface and let the end of the stick travel a narrower path. The wrist loosens a little. Instead of driving downward, the hand starts to ride on the stone. The difference is small but immediate. The rough catches lessen. The sound evens out. What had been scrape becomes rasp, and what had been resistance becomes a kind of contact you can trust. When impatience returns, it shows itself as speed. The moment the gray darkens enough to feel promising, some leftover part of the day wants to push through the last distance quickly. The circles widen. Pressure creeps back into the fingers. The sound frays. So you hear it and ease off. The stone simply responds more cleanly when the motion suits it. The stick glides instead of grabbing. The thin slurry begins to collect where the grinding surface dips toward the well. It has not yet become black in any convincing sense, but it now holds color evenly enough that the lamp can no longer shine through it without interruption. Smoke is becoming substance. The pale crescent gives way to a darker oval, soft at the edges, marked over and over by the same circular track. Your breathing settles without making a ceremony of itself. The forearm rests more fully on the desk. Your shoulder drops. The inkstick leaves a faint scent on the damp air whenever you lift it, a dry, clean darkness not unlike charred wood after rain. The water on the stone is cool enough to feel through the stick. Once or twice a bead of it touches your fingertip and leaves a tacky trace where soot has begun to thicken. There is no mess to correct, only material in transition. The room also changes, though only because your attention does. At first, the lamp had been one object among several. Now its circle of light seems to contain almost everything. The blank page beyond the stone loses some of its claim. The brush, resting across the folded cloth, no longer looks like an instrument waiting to judge the quality of the ink. It is only part of the arrangement, wood and hair at rest. The small dish of water becomes important in a different way. Its level matters. Its restraint matters. Too much water would widen the work and thin it. Too little would bring back drag and roughness. The right amount is not mysterious. It is simply modest. After a time, the sound starts to change again. The grit has softened. In its place, there is a lower, more continuous whisper, as if the stone has accepted the film now coating it, and the stick is moving through something more uniform. The circles still arrive, but they no longer announce themselves as separate efforts. One follows another with barely a seam between them. The hand knows the track. Then the water begins to run short. You see this first in the thinning sheen around the stick. The slurry darkens but loses flexibility. The sound grows a touch drier. The stick's path leaves clearer boundaries in the mixture instead of folding them back immediately. This is not failure. It is only the point at which stopping becomes part of the work. You lift the stick. The room holds still around the pause. The circle under your hand ends, and the silence that follows seems slightly larger than the sound had been. On the stone, the gathered gray-black sits in a shallow pool, glossy at its center, matte where it thins. You reach for the water dish and add only a little, a few drops that fall with soft accuracy onto the darkened surface. Fresh water does something entirely practical. It loosens what has been made. The new drops strike the thicker slurry and send pale streamers through it, clear becoming clouded, clouded becoming dark, The soot lifts and suspends itself again. For an instant, the whole surface resembles a wash of storm color, lighter veins opening and closing as the liquid finds level. Then it stills, richer than before. This brief pause changes your grip more than any earlier correction had. When you pick up the stick again, your fingers hold it with less intention, not carelessly, just without the anxious firmness that had seemed at the start like attention. There is less need now to supervise each circle. The stone is telling you enough. The renewed water gives the motion a smoother start. The end of the stick glides through the loosened slurry, drawing darker loops that immediately fold back into the hole. The sound for a few turns is almost absent. Then it returns as that low, silky whisper, softer than before, with none of the earlier grain. You can hear the thickness in it. What had been tinted water is becoming ink. The black does not arrive with drama. It accumulates. A little more soot dissolves. A little more body gathers. Each pass of the stick deepens the tone almost beyond measurable difference. But the sum of those differences becomes undeniable. The mixture no longer looks like a gray idea of black. It looks black. Not flat, not dead, but full. When the lamp strikes it, the reflection is narrow and controlled, sitting on the surface rather than shining through. The liquid clings differently to the stone. It has weight now. When it slips toward the well, it travels as one thing. This is the stage that invites one last mistake. Because the result is close, because the eye can finally recognize what it came for. You feel the old habit stir. Finish it. Make it richer, faster. Your fingers tighten. The next circle answers with a faint roughness. The sound loses its silk and remembers grit. You stop there, not by lifting the stick entirely, but by easing the pressure out of the hand before the circle is complete. The motion rounds itself. The whisper returns. That small release is cause and response, clear as the weight of the stick. You continue with light, regular circles. The black grows deep enough to hold the lamp in a thin bent line. At the edge of the grinding plane, where the slurry has gathered into the well, the ink now has the look of something finished, smooth surface, clean density, no watery halos drifting away from it. When you draw the stick once through the pool, the wake closes slowly, not at once. A dark meniscus clings to the sides of the well. The underside of the stick comes up lacquered. Outside the lamp's circle, the room has receded. Its earlier leftovers, all the small unfinished matters that had followed you in, have not been solved or banished. They have simply lost rank. The desk is enough territory. The sound of the grinding, repeated and quiet, has given the mind a narrower place to stand. By the time you slow, the ink is ready before you fully admit it. You make 2 or 3 more circles, each lighter than the last, as if confirming the truth by touch. Then you lift the stick and hold it above the stone. A black sheen coats the end, thick and even. One dark drop gathers there but does not fall. Below it, in the well, the ink lies still. This stillness is the clearest change of the evening. At the beginning, water on stone was all potential and impatience, a beginning defined by what had not yet happened. Now the surface is quiet in a different way. It has been made. It contains work. The lamp lays a softened glint across it, and the reflection stays almost straight, disturbed only by a slight settling movement that fades as you watch. The blank page remains at your side. It is not less blank than before. The brush still rests untouched. If a mark is made tonight, the ink is ready for it. If not, the readiness is not wasted. You lower the stick to the side of the stone and let your hand rest on the desk. The fingertips have a trace of tackiness where a thin film of diluted soot dried unnoticed. The skin at the base of your thumb remembers the shape of the grip. Your wrist feels warm from repetition but not strained. A soft hum moves somewhere in the room, distant and ordinary. The house settles. A board holds its place. The water dish reflects the lamp. None of it interrupts. Everything remaining has found its own level. After a moment, you dip the end of the stick once through the pool and lift it again, not to produce more, only to feel the body of the ink. It coats and releases cleanly. No grit catches. No watery edge runs away from the black. This is enough. The care that follows is simple. You set the stick aside where it can dry. You take up the water dish again and tip a little clean water onto the stone, this time not onto a bare surface waiting to begin, but over the dark traces left by use. The clear stream meets black and instantly loosens it. Narrow ribbons of gray flow outward. The well clouds, a circle you had spent so long building, disappears in seconds under the wash. There is no loss in that. The work of the ink is to become fluid. The work of the stone is to let go of it. You guide the water with your fingers just enough to carry the remaining ink from the grinding plane. The stone feels cooler now that the motion has ended. Its surface under the water is smooth in one direction, faintly satin where repeated use has polished it, slightly more matte along the outer edge where less passes. Dark eddies slide and pale as the water thins them. You pour once more, sparingly, and the last strong traces lift. What remains is a diluted gray film that catches the light in a softer version of the opening scene, clear water returning over dark stone. The circle closes by material fact, not design. The folded cloth comes into your hand. It is absorbent and plain, with just enough texture to drag a final dampness from the surface. You blot first, then wipe. The stone releases moisture reluctantly, holding a thin sheen in its shallow places until the cloth passes there too. A faint shadow of damp remains, and then vanishes. The well clears. The grinding plane returns to its dark, patient mat. You dry the stick where needed and place it beside the stone. The brush stays where it is. The page nearby holds its white reserve. You had thought, when you sat down, that it needed filling. It does not seem to need anything now. The brush rests. Nothing asks to be finished tonight. At the end, the desk is nearly as it was when you arrived. The water dish holds less. The cloth bears a few gray marks. Your fingertips are cleaner than before, though not entirely. The room has not transformed into anything grand. It is the same quiet study, the same lamp, the same wood and paper and stone. Only the pace inside it has changed. The inkstone sits cool under the light, its surface clear again except for the memory of use that cannot be seen directly, the smooth path worn by circles, the brief black pool it held, the whisper it answered with when the pressure was right. Nothing asks to be finished now. And so the evening comes to this small, sufficient stop. Water gone still, stone dried back to darkness, the room keeping a little of that made black in the air, as if the night on the desk had deepened by hand and then quietly settled into place. Thank you for spending this time with the Night Sky Reader. May your night be peaceful. Until next time, rest well.